Here, Russian forces tried to capitalize on their recent gains off the main supply road to Bakhmut, carried out a broad assault on the remaining trenches, and managed to drive the Ukrainians off the road. However, the Ukrainians cut off Russian supplies with fire, let the Russians remain under constant drone and artillery attacks, and launched an unblocking operation, clearing half of the field area. Last time we commented that the Russians managed to break one of the lines of fortifications in front of the Kromov road and cut off a large part of the supplies. I also commented that the situation remained unstable because the trenches held by the Ukrainians surrounded the Russian positions, and since they are separated by about 50 meters, fighting continued here. The most recent reports indicate that the Russians were trapped. Maintaining this trench under constant fire was extremely difficult, so the Russians made several attempts at retreat. Unfortunately for the Russians, even the withdrawal of this trench would be problematic, because the moment they left the trench to cross the tree line, they would have been shot. Such a situation, however, played in favor of the Russian command, which preferred not to lose it, since taking each line has a great cost. That is why the Russian command quickly prepared another wave of attacks and assaulted the two outer lines again. The Russian attack was very successful and they managed to move the Ukrainians to the trenches south of the road. But the intense clashes did not end here. The Ukrainians immediately began preparing for a counterattack and, in the meantime, assigned the most skilled drone operators to launch grenades non-stop about the Russians in the trenches. Fighters from the 92nd Mechanized Brigade reported that their drone operators alone managed to eliminate more than 40 Russian soldiers here in the past 2 days. After undermining Russian defensive capabilities, the Ukrainians carried out a brief mechanized assault to pave the way for their infantry. Russian sources reported that the Ukrainians used several tanks and armored vehicles, although they employed the equipment carefully and provided remote fire support. Combat footage revealed that while Russian positions in the eastern trench were under fire, special operators of the Ukrainian National Guard crossed the road and engaged in hand-to-hand combat. This was the first major step in the reconquest of the trench network. The latest images show fighters from the famous 3rd Assault Brigade. Judging by the images, they managed to open a breach in the Russian defense and completely cleared the area closest to the road line. A fighter from the Idar battalion reported that the Russians do not hold positions within 200 meters of the road, meaning the Ukrainians established full control over the trenches located between the road and the field road. From here, the Ukrainians are likely to attack the western line first because it is the most vulnerable to Ukrainian attacks. For now, the Kromov road remains inoperative because the Russians are too close. The road is in their line of sight, which means they can fire directly at vehicles. Once they are moved behind the tree line, the Russians will only be able to rely on indirect fire, which means monitoring the area with drones and coordinating with artillery and mortar teams. Carrying out indirect fire is extremely difficult, as drones can be shot down or run out of battery and artillery needs to react in time. The road is only 5 kilometers long, which means that Russians only have 3 minutes to get there if the average speed is 100 kilometers per hour. However, at the moment, Ukrainians are receiving supplies through the Ivanivsky Road, and today's images show how Ukrainians managed to enter the city.